Welcome to Triple T, number 103. Holy smokehouse, Batman, as Papa used to say. And we are 7 days, no, yeah, seven. We are so close to Christmas.
Five till Christmas. I was like, we're not 7 days away from the new
No,
year. I thought like fast forwarded through
six
a whole
days
week.
away from Christmas. And yeah, had a real quick math challenge there. Obviously, I'm up on my math tonight. Let's see what else I can do. I can tell you that my name is TJ Zebel. I call myself a professional problem solver, and I always say, no, that doesn't mean I know everything. I just have a unique way of asking questions to help people find the solutions to the challenges and questions they may have. I offer a whole plethora of services. I do corporate coaching. I work with uh, athletes from beginner all the way up to the professional level. I help people with depression, anxiety, phobias, PTSD, and wow, have we got relationship stuff going on right now. So, if you're looking for a new relationship in 2024, give me a call. I do offer a free 30-minute consultation to see if we're a match. If we're not, I will tell you, and I will help you find somebody who is. Because the main goal is to make sure that you get the change, the answers, the ahas and epiphanies that you not only are looking for, but you deserve. I do have a website, thetswb.com, the tall, skinny white boy.com. Yep, that's what it stands for. And for those of you on the call, make sure you've got your topics and your questions ready for hour number 2. I know a couple people do. Other than that, YouTube. Hi, Mom. And the rest of you out in YouTube, make sure that you do all the YouTube stuffy stuff. Click the subscribe button, smash the like button, leave comments, comment on your comments, comment on other people's comments. Let's just comment like crazy. And I think that's about it. Other than anybody got anything cool, exciting they want to share from the last 7 days since we were here?
I'll share something if nobody else is going to.
Please.
I will just say, there have been several times this whole year too, but especially this week that there'll be moments where I'm starting to kind of lose my faith of, like I used to believe God doesn't give you something that's too hard for you to overcome, or, call it the universe, God, whatever your belief system is, that's fine. But every time that I've gotten through something that's really difficult and I just think I can't go on top of this, and I think, is life, could God love me, all that sort of thing, the thought that just keeps coming into my mind is, look at the people in your tribe, look at the people around you. And every time that thought comes in, I'm like, yeah, okay, I can't question it. Like, I am so blessed to have the people in my group, no matter what I'm going through. Like, that is the most precious gift I could possibly have. There's no question. So I guess I'm just along for the ride for everything else. But thank you for being part of my tribe.
What's up?
So I can also share something along the lines. There was this mentor that I met not too long ago, and it turned out that he's one of the best teachers I have ever had. And he was facilitating. There was a group of men's group, about 50 to 70 people. And there was this guy who was just sort of walking around the circle of men. He didn't really want to participate. And one of the helpers asked my mentor, he said, what are we going to do with this guy? He says, this guy doesn't want to participate. And my mentor told us a story of there was this men's group that he was a part of for 10 years. And there was the guy who would always come in and sit, and he wouldn't speak. He wouldn't really want to check in with his feelings. He wouldn't want to share much about himself. And for 10 years, and for these 10 years, other men in the group judged him, and they judged him harshly. There is this thing we call clearing. This is where one man stands in front of another and they say the judgments and the things they have to say for the man in front of them. And then basically that it's like a mirror. Everything they say, there is a shadow inside of them connected to the projections they have. And so it's really helpful. But this poor man was not really welcome in this, like Holly was saying, community. And so what happened after 10 years, he decided to share something. And the first time he opened his mouth, he started to talk. Everybody was just waiting to see what he's going to say. And he said that coming to the circle for past 10 years made a difference in his life, that he would walk across the bridge many times. He thought about killing himself. And he said circle is the only thing that kept him alive. And when this guy was asking about the man who was just kind of walking around the circle and didn't want to participate, that's the story that my mentor told him, and everything was very clear. Sometimes we don't even know how much of an influence we can have on another human.
Absolutely, 100%. And I've actually witnessed that a couple of times. One of the network marketing companies that I was part of, we had one guy that would show up, never brought people, just he showed up to every event. And Mark Aceta, the trainer for the company, said, don't judge these people. Sometimes you're the only family they got. And they just show up because that's where they can find family.
Yeah.
Some will be workers. Some will just show up because that's where they know to show up. They don't know where else to go. And the cool part is the more you learn stuff like this, the better you get at protective empathy, like we talked about 2 weeks ago. You start looking at people different and go, wow, I don't know your story, but I'm sure you have one. Cool. Thank you for sharing that story. I'd forgotten about that angle, that concept.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else got anything to share while we're on a roll?
I feel like that goes in alignment with whose life might I change today, even if I don't know about it. Those are great stories, guys.
All right, well, if we're caught up, I guess we can dive into this week's topics that were downloaded. And this week is problem versus progress thinking, dancing in the fog, and manifesting license. And problem versus progress thinking, it's kind of an analogy, if you want to put it that way, about the way people look at challenges in their life. And there are a number of people that will look at the problems, how big they are, how hard it's going to be to get through them, what it's going to take, versus the people that are progress thinking. When they see challenges like that, they see learning opportunities And how are we going to take these challenges and approach them in a way that we can even look further beyond them? They're just stepping stones. These are just events. I've gone through how many events in my life? This is just another part of my progression. And it's not too hard to tell the difference between the two because you hear it in their words, how they describe certain things. They will, the problem thinking style, you bring up an idea and they'll be very quick to tell you how many ways it won't work. Worst case scenario. Well, but this could happen. I mean, if we do this, I mean, what if this happens? And that. Whereas the progress thinker, when you bring up a situation to them, they'll start offering multiple solutions. 3 solutions to every event, situation, or problem. Well, we could do it this way, and it might happen here, or we could do it this way, or we could do it this way. And they start mapping out the terrain for all 3 of the solutions. The problem thinker will typically be focused on the one solution in all the ways that it could go wrong. How many ways can it go sideways? I've also noticed that problem thinkers will also look back on things, remembering the things that went wrong, and forget that there were lessons inside of what didn't work out. Yeah, well, I tried that and it didn't work, and da 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 da. And when you ask them, okay, but what did you learn from it? And you'll see them stop for a bit because they actually have to think and analyze it. Whereas the progress thinkers will tell you about an issue they went through and what they learned from it and where they went right after that. And when you're dealing with clients, understanding the difference between the two will help you reframe how they're going to approach upcoming challenges. Any questions, ahas, epiphanies on that so far? Yes, Lenore.
I often call them problem-oriented rather than progress versus what was it? Productive, I think. They always seem to like
Versus
everything's going to
progress.
go. What was it?
Problem versus progress.
Yeah, but there was another one. Wasn't it productive?
Production.
Oh, there was another.
The
Getting my PRs
progress
mixed up.
ones tend to be a little more focused on production versus what can go wrong. But
I do notice people who are very problem-oriented, and the problem with that is that's the first thing right out of their mouth.
Yeah.
The problem is that, yeah, for sure. And they just come up with almost like a tennis racket as to why you're wrong, why it's just not going to work out. And rather than looking at it and really examining it and seeing, okay, well, how else might this work?
And real quick, it's interesting watching a progress thinker interact with a problem thinker, because when you pointed out the tennis thing, it's, well, here's a solution. Yeah, and here's 3 reasons it won't work. Oh, well, here's another solution. And here's 3 reasons that one won't work. Okay, well, here's another solution. And here's 12 reasons that one won't work. Well, I guess we're screwed. Well, you don't have to be so negative about it.
It's really It really, especially when you hear them, knowing, I think there's also a difference between clients and people that you happen to know, especially if you know their thought process. It's almost, why frustrate myself?
Yep.
And just, okay, I can come up with a variety of solutions. I know I can, but it's not worth the conversation that's going to eventually ensue.
Exactly. Mark.
I had a new client today. I had a couple of them, but he wants to be more social, wants to be able to, he has social anxiety by his own description. And so I explained to him, I jumped right in and I went off the intake, and I demonstrated, I talked to him about the echo technique and how you can create rapport with people. And first thing out of his mouth, oh, that won't work. Like, okay. So then I said, all right, well, tell me about your week. And then I demonstrated the echo technique, and he really started talking. And I was like, okay. And I stopped on one point. I said, do you notice what I was doing? No. I said, I was giving you back your words. How did it feel? I don't know. I was like, okay, we got a lot of work to do here.
The best thing to do for them, depending on what format you're on, I use Skype with my clients, is have them record it and allow them to have the recording and tell them, when we get done, I want you to watch this section again. Because especially when you're teaching Echo Talk and the trifecta, because it's so hard to detect when you're in a one-on-one conversation, whereas we both know, most people here know on this call, when you're outside of the conversation, it is plain as day. When you're the one in the conversation, you just know, this is an amazing conversation. I feel so talkative. I just love, I feel heard, validated, and understood. This is amazing.
Again, I do all my sessions in person, where and when I can, but I understand what you're saying.
And if you can record that, because even when I was doing my sessions in person, I'm 100% virtual now, but I recorded them as well. I learned that from Dr. David. You record everything. Everything. And with the technology we have today, it is so easy that there's no excuse to not record anymore. And I've had a few customers or clients that were uneasy about it. Well, I don't want to be recorded. I said, well, then we can't work together. Well, why does it have to be recorded? To protect both of us. What? I said, there's a lot of dark triad hypnotists out there. Not a lot, but enough to be a concern. That you want to make sure that you know exactly what they said. And there are a lot of scammers out there that may try to tell, they're planning to do a heinous act against somebody, but they want to go in to see a hypnotist so that they can come out and do the heinous act and say, well, the hypnotist told me to while I was in trance. And so if you got it, if they know it's all recorded, that's a little more protection on both sides. That's just the way it was taught to me, made sense, so I just record everything. Any other questions, input on that? The other thing that when you start converting, I'm going to say, a problem thinker towards progress thinking, there's going to be a lot of emphasis on language, self-talk, and all the above. And teaching them to hear what they're saying is going to be the big one. And this can be done with a combination of future pacing and having them pull up old recordings to see the difference between the two. And of course, anybody that's been around me long enough knows that I will call people out on negative self-talk quite often because I'm trained. The more you become aware of it, the more you will hear other people talking, especially when they talk about themselves. Any questions on that? Inputs, ahas, epiphanies? Well, that one went quick. Cool. So we'll move on to the next topic, dancing in the fog. Dancing in the fog actually came from a session with a client, and it refers to anxiety and the way people label things. And they said that they're going through a lot of anxiety with a situation. They're going through a divorce, and it's causing a lot of anxiety. And when I explained to them anxiety is just fear without a basis, I asked them, what are they afraid of? And typically, when I ask people who are self-describing themselves as having anxiety, when I ask them what they're afraid of, they almost always have a problem pinpointing it, which is why it's anxiety, not fear. And I said, anxiety is like being in fog, a dense fog, and you start creating stories about what's out there. I know there's something out there, the boogeyman's out there, you hear a noise, and immediately that noise is a 12-foot monster that's going to rip you to shreds. And more often than not, when we finally clear the fog, a lot of times it's nothing. Or it's something, you clear the fog and you find out what you're afraid of, and it's something you've already survived. But you've turned it into such a huge beast inside the fog that when you actually see it without the fog, you're like, oh, well, I've beat you before. I can be intimidated, but I'm not anxious. I've fought the fight before. And if I have to, I'll fight the fight again. Doesn't mean you want to fight the fight, but you don't have to sit there burning up all the energy of anxiety when you don't know where to point the fight towards. And so I finally told her, if perchance the anxiety comes back, dance in the fog. If you can't see anybody, nobody's watching you anyway. So you get to dance like nobody's watching. And knowing that the vast majority of the time, there's nothing there anyway, then why worry about it? Save the energy for when the beast is visible in front of you, and when it's something that you can actually focus your energy on. There's a story about a rock climber who lost track of time and was coming down the mountain and slipped and fell, but the rope grabbed and held him, but it was in the dark when he woke up. And he was barely hanging on, and he was screaming for help, knew nobody was there, and he heard a voice that just said, "Let go." And he wouldn't, because he just knew if he let go, he would die. And so all night he stood there, or hung there, one arm beat up. And when the sun finally came up, he was that far off the ground. Is it our environment? Is it our past? Is it our lack of trust in ourselves or others? All the above? None of the above? But if you can dance in the fog, the sounds don't have quite the impact. Turn up the music. Time's going to pass anyway. Any input, ahas, epiphanies on that one? Yes, please.
I really like how you said dance in the fog. I think definitely, it's in everything. It's your environment. It's the experiences that you learned from. It's modeling from other people. There are so many things that come into it. And I also don't know if people realize, and this, actually, I'm just going to say just me did not realize that I had anxiety. I just thought I was nervous about things and that I was uneasy. I would not have called it anxiety at the time. But also that I don't think you get rid of it. You just learn how to manage it. And there are certain things that you can clear in the resolve of, like, we would say we got rid of it. I would say I got rid of certain issues. But having that response of feeling anxious about going to do something, I don't think that's completely ever eliminated. I think that's completely wired into us, but how we manage it is where the key is. And also, I think people, really just want that quick fix. Amazon, 2-day time turnaround. They don't want to just get rid of it. They don't want to know how to manage it. They don't want to figure it out and necessarily understand I can work with it and I can maneuver myself through it when it appears, versus somebody else get rid of it and then I'll be happily ever after.
And that's why it's so important to allow them to understand anxiety being fear without a foundation. Again, standing in the fog and being terrified of what might be out there. And if
No,
they
but,
go ahead, Sava.
I didn't know you're going to continue. You want to finish? I'll share.
Well, I was just going to say, when you can teach yourself, like you said, learn how to work with it by asking yourself, what am I afraid of? what is this energy actually from? It's okay to be afraid. If anybody says they're never afraid, they're either lying or they're but when you're afraid, you typically know what you're afraid of. And that can be managed and attacked and assessed, and can even be uh, approached with almost like a triage type approach. What's important about what needs to be addressed first, what may not survive. Go ahead, Sabo.
So I never heard anybody talk about this, and I never talked about it either. And it's the concept that the most resonates with me at this moment. So I'm gonna share with you.
Okay.
When I started with therapeutic work, I thought about the concept of what are the main emotions that come up, big five, being anger, being joy, shame, guilt, fear. And I always thought about that as layers. We work through this emotion to get to that emotion, and there is some. It can be beneficial concept. For me, it was beneficial as a therapist to look at it that way. So, and then later I learned more and I started to realize that some of, let's say, shame, for example, it's about the personality, where guilt is about the behavior, and yet both are just nothing but fear. Fear of embarrassment, fear of rejection, fear of not being good enough, etc. So this is how those feelings are created. Now the question is, what is anger? What about the rest of the feelings? And so, long story short, when I really look through and around it, I started to realize that there is basically fear on one side and love on the other side as the main emotions, and anxiety being sort of some type of, it's a type of a fear. And so then I thought further, and one really smart person said to me said, what if there is no fear? What if it's just love? That's all it is. And when people feel fear, it's just perceived that people have desire to have what they love, or and here is the about love, something that I never talked about before, but it really kind of clicks into this if you pay attention. So so let's say love can be healthy. We can have healthy attachment and unhealthy. We can be in a relationship with someone and not be in this healthy, pure, divine experience. We can be attached to something that's really damaging a lot of other parts of ourselves, while a part of us is getting some sort of pleasure. So there's always benefit in some way, but holistically, as a whole, we are not getting what um we are not really experiencing that full love in relationship, uh, and so we love something that's not benefiting us. And so this is how I think anxiety comes up, and fear, when we have love and attachment. I call it attachments to things and people and ourselves and the perceived ego. And so what really helped me in my life to let go of anxiety, and I had major anxiety because as a kid I was taught to be strong, to man up, muscle up, do things, fight through life. And so it was really hard for me to tap into sadness and to tap into grief, which also, going back to what is sadness, it's just loss of something we love. In a way, it can be a thing, it can be an idea, or a person, or a part of ourselves.
Mhm.
And or a potential loss, or it's basically all these feelings. One of the ideas here are really coming from love. And so once I started to understand that, then I started to ask myself, what is that I'm anxious about? I really got to the point where I didn't want to work with clients who have anxiety, because I felt I'm out of alignment. I'm not helping myself. At one moment, I even thought about taking pills, which was kind of opposite of what I was teaching for years. And so that then I went through the major breakthrough when I started to realize that anxiety is actually just my attachment. It's just my attachment because I perceive that I love this so much. I can't live without me. Kind of, it's like a part of me. It's like attached to my soul. It's like a cord, but not a healthy one. And then really, this is where I'm gonna close. This might be beneficial for some people. And then what I started to realize is that tapping into the feminine aspect of myself, where I found sadness, grief as a way to wash. It's like when tears leave the body, the pain leaves the mind. And also I see our body, my body, as a vessel, like a boat. And sometimes there is water inside, and the water has to come out for this vessel to be clean, to be empty, to be able to function properly. And so for me, just letting go and being and surrendering, which is also tapping on the other polarity, and to God, was a major relief of anxiety in my life. And it's really me walking my talk to where people meet me and they go, I feel so much peace around you. And it's really not me. It's not that I did something. It's just was always there. It's just that my attachments to things were causing so much fear and anxiety in my life. So by letting go of those, I was able to just experience what was natural from the beginning.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Good
I
info.
love it.
No, go ahead, please.
I was going to say, I love what you had shared, Savo, especially right at the end. I think when you find yourself in alignment, when you said it's not you, it is quite literally you in that alignment, why people feel so much peace around you, because you were able to find that balance. And I think naturally we come in and out of that, keeping that balance, especially when, the things that we do and that we work very hard to help other people with. And then we may not feel as, I don't want to say imposter syndrome, but we may not feel as clear as we want or as strong as we want. And people are coming to ask for help. And we think, well, why are you asking me for help? I'm a mess over here. As finding that balance and being able to navigate into that chaos and then find your way back out. And when you go back in, finding your way back out.
And that's why, like, what I really like, and I find peace in, let's say, when I work with clients, I let them know I'm a flawed person. I'm doing these flawed techniques from the bottom of my heart, trying to do the best for you. And and that's all I can do. And I let him know also, then I get that contract that also David was talking about. It's like, and I'm going to do the best I can. And my intention is, and I if you sign up, if you want to help yourself, then your job is to follow my instructions. And my job is to give you the change you came for. And I'm going to do the best I can. Am I perfect? I'm not. So I really release that burden of me trying to be something, hold something in their mind, and then have this really heavy feeling like Hercules carrying the whole world on my back, trying to be this strong. No, I'm just like one little branch in like God's being the tree of life. And
I
that's
love
that.
the way that you said that. I'm a flawed person. I actually, I was with a client and they had shared with me, he was talking with somebody else and he said, give me permission to not be perfect. And I was like, oh, wow, was such a great sentence, because this other person's looking up to him. And I had said, I love the way that you had said that. And it's exactly what you had just shared. I'm a flawed person.
And that shadow doesn't have any more power over you because it's right in front of you. When samurais, they take the swords out in front of them, and they put the fear right in front of them, so it doesn't control them. It's not like a monster from the back that's controlling and driving them. It's like right in front. And so putting the shadow on the light, and here it is, I'm just as fucked up. And and there you go. And then you have good rapport too.
Got that laughter.
Yeah.
I actually had to share that with a client today about they had anxiety about trying new things. And when we boiled it down, it was the fear of not being able to hit the mark. And I said, well, who told you you had to hit the mark in the first couple of tries at something new? The story they had created in their mind was it takes a long time to learn something because I never hit the mark when I start. And I said, well, what if you gave yourself permission to not hit the mark the first couple of times, but to get the lesson and become better than the person you were the last time you tried it? How much quicker do you think you'd be able to do new things? And they went, oh. I said, yes. That's why babies never quit trying to figure out how to walk. How many times do babies fall on their butt trying to learn how to walk? Man, if we had that kind of thinking, we'd all be crawling. Except for the crazy one that'd be like, all right, so I fell down a couple of times. I'm probably going to fall down a couple more times, but this time I stood up longer than I did last time. Mark?
I believe that we learn fear. I think we arrive here fearless and relentless.
Mm-hmm.
And when you watch a baby, learning how to walk, he is fearless. It doesn't matter how many times he face plants. He gets right back up because he's fearless and he's relentless. He's going to learn to walk like the big people he sees around him. And but we're taught fear. Don't do that. You're going to hurt yourself. Don't eat that. You're going to die. We're taught fear. And I was at this outdoor mall, and this beautiful lady, black lady, was just not going to have the 8-9 months pregnant, and she had a little 2-year-old. He was running around, and we'll say his name was Johnny, and he was running around, grabbing her sandal, throwing it, laughing, giggling, and she says to me, she goes, "Yeah, I never believed in the terrible twos till I had a 2-year-old, so I knew what age you was." And but he was running around. I was like, "Hey, how you doing? What's your name?" Hey, I put up a high five for him. He ran right over, gave me a high five. And Dad was shopping, and Mom was on the bench. And eventually, Dad came out, and he, they started walking away. I said, "Hey, bye, Johnny, bye." And when he comes right over to me, I had my hand up again. He gave me a high five, and I said to him, I looked at him, I said, "Johnny, no fear." And his body language said everything, because he didn't know what it was. So I'm sure he went back to Mom and said, "Mommy, what's fear?" He didn't know what it was because he hadn't been taught fear. And it's something we're taught, okay? Because like I said, if we could spend our lives being fearless and relentless, what would we not be capable of? And that's how we arrive.
I fully agree. And on the other part of that as well, we're also taught compassion and empathy, because if you look at some little kids, you don't leave them alone with a cat for too long, because one of them is going to get hurt. Any other inputs, ahas, epiphanies on this? Yes, Lynn.
So there are times where I'll be doing some work on myself, and even, I know some of the questions that we ask people when we're regressing them, how old might this feel? Was this something that you were born with, or did you take it from somebody else? And there are times where I will, remind myself, when I was born, and I'm sitting in the crib at 2 months old or whatever it was, did I have this? Did I have this fear? Was I worried about this? And if not, okay, where did I get it? And tracking down where I got it from, I found to be very helpful in a variety of things. Who gave this to me? And realizing the power of being able to offer that back to whomever it came from or wherever it came from.
Thank you for sharing that. And that a squirrel just came up and said that's why I do the sand protocol, so that they can bring all of that energy out in front of them, turn it into a pile of sand, and separate it into two piles, one that only belongs to them. They're the only ones that picked it up, created it, versus the pile that was given to them by outside sources, whether it's family, friends, the media, whatever. And I would say 90% of the time, their personal pile is 20% or lower. And I've only had a few, I'm talking maybe 2% at the most, have ever had their pile of sand be more than 80%. It's almost always all of the stuff was handed to them by somebody else, and they've been carrying it around ever since. And as soon as we extract the lessons, well, then that sand pile changes quite a bit. And we don't really need to carry that weight around anymore, because all we needed was the lessons. Anything else before I throw an addition on to the first hour? Okay, bonus round. Because we are so close to that magical day where everybody waits 364 days before they decide they're going to change their life, it's time once again to plan out what you're going to do and who you're going to be when January 1st, 2025 shows up. Who do you want to be? What do you want to accomplish? And a little thing that I learned from a few of the different speakers that I've been honored to be in their presence or their crowd is the concept of writing yourself a check in the future for a sizable amount. You predate it. So on this one, everybody would date their check for January 1st, 2025, and write it for an amount that kind of makes you, don't know I'm going to do it. I mean, obviously, don't write it for $7.2 trillion. but make it big enough that you know that you're going to have to grow and move forward to be able to cash that check. And Jim Carrey has a great story about this. He wrote himself a predated check for, was it $1 million?
Acting services rendered. I thought it was 100,000, but it might have been $1 million.
I think it was $1 million. And he signed the contract for $1 million like 3 days before his check was dated. He said, I didn't know how it was going to happen. I just believed it was going to happen. And he set out to become the person who would be able to cash that check. And so we're very close. So I have in all my clients now get a day planner for 2024, and then posting their check on the front or back cover, and then figuring out who are they going to become, who's going to be in their tribe on January 1st, 2025. Describing their 2025 tribe, describing their sources of income. Notice I didn't say their job, just over broke, jump out of bed, all the other acronyms for the job. But you have them, you describe in your journal for your sources of income so that they can all work together with who your king or queen is, whether you're married or single or not, because as life happens, everybody's changing. Doesn't hurt to kind of figure out who you would like your person to become, so that you can figure out who you have to become their person, or stay their person, whichever way you want to look at it. And when you think about you are the sum of the 5 people that you interact with the most, not who you've known the most, who you interact with the most. How do they talk? Do they talk about they're hoping to get an hourly raise? Or are they talking about their next investment portfolio? Are they talking about hopefully they'll get another day off? Or how they're going to be able to do business while they're on a 2-week vacation? One of the 8. 16 weeks of vacation? Are you out of your mind? Why not? It's going to be 2024. If your streams of income can be done remotely, wouldn't it just be terrible if while you were on vacation, you had to dedicate 4 hours, 3 days, take 3 days out of your vacation, 4 hours a day, to do a little work in another country? Because you can, because you've designed that life. And you now have a tribe that supports that, that brings you to a level that just seems normal. Create that lifestyle. Whatever it takes. We are the designers of our lives. We have the option to do crazy immense things. I ran across one of my vision boards while I was going through my office, and on it was international trainer. I didn't have a clue how it was going to happen. I just knew it was going to happen. And the cool part is, I didn't get that title on Skype. I got it in person in Australia. And I remember when I got to do that and how it felt to actually realize that I was stepping into a vision that I had planted probably 8 years earlier. Yeah. And had just buried it. Always kind of been there, but didn't really. And I one thought that came to mind was, if I had actively pursued it, how much quicker might it have happened? Because it was bound to happen anyway. So that's why I tell people, journal this stuff down. Put it in writing. Share it with others. Make it happen. And holy smokehouse, we didn't even do manifest license. I jumped right from Dancing in the Fog and we rolled right across it. So I've got 2 minis to describe the manifest license, and it basically goes like this. One of my clients going through the Triple P, the Perfect Partner Protocol, still has until February for their person to show up, and they're getting a little restless because, by golly, the holidays are here, and the person that I thought was perfect isn't perfect. I said, yeah, it's called a lesson. It's called research. Yeah, but when am I want it. And I said, hold on. You told the universe that you would have everything ready February, that you would be ready February. You ordered your car how many months ago? It's still in the factory being built, and you're angry because you can't drive it today. Now, I can't tell you that it's not ready, that it's not already being built, but are you qualified to drive it today? Do you have the license to accept the order that you put in? Have you become the person that is capable of handling the blessing that you are attempting to manifest? That's the other part to putting the request in for the blessing. I want a Ferrari, top of the line. Okay. Do you know how to drive a stick? Well, no. Well, it comes with a stick. Comes with a manual transmission. That's the one that you ordered. We don't make this one in automatic. Or even if, well, yeah, I drove a manual transmission when I was, well, I was 16, and I burnt out the clutch, and I haven't driven one since. But I really want one with the gate shifter because it looks really cool. Well, you don't get one until you've proven that you know how to operate it. Yes, but I want it now. You haven't become the person yet that can own it. Where is my king? I put in the order. I know exactly what I want. Yes, but you still have some growing up to do. You still have some past issues you need to let go of. You still have some lessons that you need to recognize and own up to, so that when your king shows up or your queen, you are the person that they deserve. Do you have your manifesting license? Have you done the work? Any input, ahas, epiphanies on that little one? Yes.
Those were crazy, powerful questions. Only bananas. A
We got
plus.
bananas.
Oh, yes. Wow.
Anybody else? Yes.
I didn't know if Saba was going to pop on. Um, um, I think also the thing that I definitely struggle with, especially even just thinking about the triple pay, and because it's a deadline, in my brain, it feels like, okay, then it's going to arrive on this day, and rather than being okay, and I think that's part of the manifestation is you're okay in waiting a bit longer. You're okay that it didn't arrive. And that's the part that I get hung up on, because I know, I think very similar to your client, like, well, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Like, what the hell? What happened? And that for sure is where I get stuck in discord.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because especially when it comes to relationships, I often have to remind my clients, are you sure they're ready? Are you sure you're ready? Hopefully you've put in an amazing, specific, awesome order. And you may think you're ready. Are you sure? Are they ready? You'll find out. Because when they're ready, the introduction will be what I'm finding from my success clients. When they were finally ready, the funny part was they were at the point where they no longer were focused on where are they. They had gotten to a point where they'd cleaned up enough, they'd worked on themselves enough that they were pleased and happy with themselves. They were happy in their skin. And it started with hello, and went right into because they were finally ready, both of them. Just like when people are trying to manifest other items. Yes.
So are they, when you're talking about them and they're okay never receiving it, or they're okay waiting longer? They're okay what?
They're okay with waiting. All of a sudden they're at a point where I was so rushed, I was so focused, I had been living in scarcity mode for so long. All my other relationships were horrible, and I just had to find something to replace them because I knew that I was just going to find one that was good enough. And when you ask them, well, how much work have you done on yourself? Well, again, to use the analogy of a sports car, Saba will concur. Not just anybody can own a Ferrari. Even if you've got the money, it doesn't mean that you are a person who should be driving a Ferrari. And sometimes that's the problem, is they have the money and they can get a Ferrari. That's why you see so many millionaires and billionaires. Who do they have hanging off of their arm? A Ferrari. Why do they go through so many? Because they don't know how to take care of it. They don't know how to drive it. They don't know how to all the above. And that's why I liked when Darren Hardy was being open and honest and all the above. And where part of the basis of my triple P protocol came from is he wanted a partner. He had the money, he had the prestige, he had all the above, but he didn't have the person. And Elijah's here, yes. But what he went through is he took the time to write down every single thing about his person. And then he went back and analyzed everything he had written down and went, and who would this person be attracted to? And what part am I missing? And then he went to work on himself. And when he got himself in alignment with the order he had placed, his person magically showed up. Just like that. Oh, and she was everything he had written down.
So something I would like to add on that is what Jim Rohn said. He said, do it not because what you are gonna have, but because of the person you're gonna become. And that brings me back to the core, which is really the feeling, because everything we do, because either we want to change the way we feel or we want to keep on feeling the same. And then the big question is, if you can have that feeling now, would you still chase after what you are chasing after? And many people, if they're really in touch with themselves and aware, they say, no, why would I want to do that? I just want to have that feeling. And a lot of people don't have reference what that feels like. And sometimes I would ask a client, how would it be if you have it now? And they say, oh, I would feel peace. And then I would say, well, let's see, how would it be if you were to breathe the way you breathe when you feel peaceful? And by connecting them to the feeling, then what happens is there is this, what we call emotional refractory period. We can easily access the all the states from the past, the times when we were feeling that, we can regress. However, we can also future progress to something that's unlike that state. So I find the most beneficial for people to do their visualization when they're in the state they want to be in, because that's gonna project everything perfectly, even if they don't try hard to do so. If that doesn't make sense, did I explain that well? I
Yes,
never really talked
that's
about it.
no. I'm glad you brought it, especially with the quote from Jim Rohn. I love that one.
Mm,
That just like if you want to be a millionaire, you don't focus on the $1 million you'll have. You focus on who you're going to become to have that. It's not about the money, it's about who you're going to become.
yeah.
And like Elijah put out on the comments there, end state energy. What is it going to feel like when you reach that moment? What will that, and when you start focusing and identifying with that energy, it's so much easier to to get yourself pointed in the direction to become the person that's going to be.
Also, while we're on the subject, if you want to make $1 million, you have to be prepared to lose 2, which basically means if you want to net 1 million, you need to gross 3, and the rest is the cost of doing business along the way.
Yep.
Okay, nobody just made $1 million without spending any money. So just while we're hovering around that subject, in order to actually end up with $1 million in your pocket, you're probably going to have to make somewhere around 3, and the rest will go on your expenses.
And the other part I found interesting from a number of multimillionaires, every single one of them said the first million was the hardest. Each one after that became easier and easier and easier. But it was becoming the person who was a millionaire was the biggest challenge.
Yes, so for me, I was sitting one night and my brother was calculating the inventory of our car business, and he was going online and checking the amount of inventory and the value of other stuff and investments in business. And he said to me, oh, we have over $1 million, so officially you're a millionaire. And I just said, oh, so what do we do now? It was like nothing really has changed besides that I had to make commitments to take some people out to celebrate, and that was nice to plan. But it was never the goal. But back then, when I thought business was always a game for me, and I never thought about it in terms of like that money, the cash, or just the number in the bank. It was really just maybe also fighting spirit, that the desire to win the game, that kind of thing. Really, so from the bottom of my heart, that's God knows.
Yep. Awesome. And we're already 15 minutes into the second hour, which I know there were a few people that already had some topics and questions set up for the second hour. So we can keep going on with this. And if somebody has questions or topics they had waiting for the second hour, this would be a good time to bring them up. So we've got some time to chat about. And Lenora said, can we talk about the ego? We can talk lots about the ego.
What
Do you
about
have
it?
any particular question?
I was wondering what you guys think of it. I think I had always villainized it rather than seeing that there's two sides to it. So what are your thoughts?
Good topic.
So one night I was driving with a friend of mine. His name is Toby, a good friend of mine. We do yoga together. He's my mentor when we do yoga. He also comes to my seminars and we do some men's work together. We went to this workshop. We drove to this workshop. It was like shadow work kind of stuff, and we talked about our shadows, and which is really connected to the part of the ego that's the most dangerous, the one that's suppressed, denied, or hidden. And he said to me, he said, why are you teaching? And I said, well, because I love to share and with people and see people happy. And he said, is that really all that is? And I said, well, that's what it is. And he said, well, that sounds like gold, and I can see that in you, and I can also see that in myself. But is there anything else? Is there anything in your shadow? And at that moment, I didn't recognize any shadow. So we drove. I came home. On our way back, I talked to him about psychology, and I talked to him about what ego is from a psychological perspective. But I didn't really put anything. It didn't really personalize anything, or I was avoiding. I didn't really want to go deeper because I knew that I'm hiding some part of that shadow ego from myself. And so I got home, and then we were texting that night. Tomorrow, I started to realize that there is a shadow aspect of my ego. And so basically, when I was talking to him about ego, I was saying to him, what's id, what's ego, what's superego, according to Freud. So I was trying to explain, but I wasn't really in touch with my ego. And so tomorrow I started to realize that another reason why I teach is because I like attention. I like to be recognized. The boy inside of me likes to be recognized and likes to be validated. And when I really was able to accept that part of me, ego, the shadow, yeah. Well, also, when there is Dr. Wayne Dyer says that ego stands for edging God out. So earlier, TJ was talking about what something else stands for, and I wrote it down somewhere. So it just reminded me of what ego stands for. So they say, and so for me, just recognizing that I have ego, that ego is developed in me long time ago when I was a little boy, who, when his needs were not met, it's a way for me to survive in the world. And putting that in front of me and looking at it from a perspective above, it really puts me in that perspective to where I can act from my higher self, and not from my ego. And I think ego can be very beneficial too.
Amen. Holly. I don't know if you're talking. We can't hear you, Holly.
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Okay. Sorry about that. So I'm going to kind of come at this from a side angle. I absolutely love that, by the way. Everything Savo said, spot on. So I've always been fascinated by a concept. Dr. Viktor Frankl talks about it as the concept is kind of the four archetype. And what he says about that is several different civilizations have discovered that 2 + 2 = 4. But they may not use the exact same language to describe it. You know, maybe it's English, maybe they use Roman numerals, or, we may not all do it the exact same way, but the concept is the same. And this kind of idea that you can take different concepts, and the reason a lot of them mirror each other or have at least somewhat similar is because there's a fundamental truth that's underneath that's the same. Anyway, so when I think of, the ego, the superego, and the id, I know this is not a one-for-one analogy at all, but I think the principle might be useful. I kind of think of it as, we talk about the three brains, the reptilian brain, the neocortex, all that. And when I think about it, none of those three brains are right. None of those three brains are wrong. They kind of need each other to function properly in society. And if you aren't going around making sure you get fed, it's going to be a really, really bad thing. If you're not going around making sure that your emotions are taken care of, it's going to be really, really bad. Those things are looking out for you. But at the same time, we also do function in a society. And if you're just giving into those things and you never ever are polite or think about other people or are empathetic or have any kind of manners, that's also going to be a bad thing too. So anyway, that's kind of the way I look at the ego, even though like I said, I know it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. I think there's a healthy way it can come out, and then there's an unhealthy way it can come out. And to completely deny it and say, oh, it's all evil, and I don't need to look out for myself, I don't have needs, that's not a good attitude to have. But at the same time saying it's all about me and I don't have to pay attention to any of my needs and I don't ever have to get them fulfilled, that's not necessarily healthy either. We have needs for a reason, whether you believe in God or not. If you believe in God, God gave us those needs. So, it's kind of finding that healthy spot. So I could be completely off on that, but that was just my 2 cents.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. Linda's got her hand up.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I needed. Thank you.
Okay.
You don't remember last week that my microphone was broke?
Yes.
Oh, well, this whole time I've been sitting here trying to fix it. It's the first time I tried to fix it. And so I thought I had it. And I thought, well, I guess I better check. So my needs have been met.
Then how's your ego feel about that?
Pretty damn good.
I wanted to add on to the advantage of ego. The people, there are a number of people that have healthy large egos, and one of the advantage to them is those people, if they tell you that they're going to do something, their ego will not allow them to not do it. Their ego will not allow them to quit until they accomplish it. Now that can be good or bad as well. But when you recognize that in some of those people, when they tell you that they're going to do something, and you know that it's ego driven, chances are pretty good that you don't have to sit there and constantly check up on them. They are constantly checking up on themselves all the time to make sure that they can get done what they said they're going to do. Does that make sense? Your mic's not on, Slavo.
Question for you, TJ.
Yeah.
What is that's not ego?
What is that?
What is it that's not ego? What do we have who are we that's not ego? What's outside of ego?
I believe that inside of the person that is not ego would be the pure, I think non-ego side is where a lot of the empath part is, which is why when I teach questioning affirmations, one of the first ones that I teach is, whose life will I change for the better, ... even if I don't know about it, to make sure that I take the ego out of it. I'm not doing it for the glory or for myself. I'm doing it simply to make the world a better place. And whether that you call that the empath side, if you call it um, the quiet side, whatever, I think that would be the side that might have the least amount of ego. What do we got here? We got Holly put in ego definitions, a person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance. 2, the part of the mind that mediates between the conscious and the unconscious is responsible for reality testing and a sense of personal identity. 3, a conscious thinking subject.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your throat flow. I just thought it was important to see how different those definitions could be.
Yes, and that's the fun part about trying to describe what exactly it is and is not. And Fran's got her hand up.
And Fran pressed the wrong button. Remember, though, that, without an ego, we're built in with this. It is a survival mechanism. It is a human progression mechanism. If we don't have ego, we're all going to be extremely passive and die out. So there's a certain amount of ego that's needed to progress thoughts, to have determination, to have focus, to have leaders. We are a gregarious. We need our tribe to survive. And if there isn't a leader in the tribe, what are we going to do? We have to recognize what's good about it as well.
TJ, thank you. I just have one more question for you, if you're open.
Of course.
Okay, so we talked about this, and what I heard you say that ego, what's not ego is when the empathy, when what we do for others, and you didn't say this word, but to me it sounds like contribution. And does that resonate? Okay, so here's my question to you. So let's say that I'm going to use I statements. So let's say that I was 5 years old, and I was playing with some friends, and I had some extra candies, and I gave those candies to my friends because all I had at that time was my ego, selfish. But that's the very first time I decided to share something with someone, and maybe just because I didn't like those candies because I had too much sugar. And then my mom comes and she says, Savo, you're such a good boy. You share the candies. I'm going to give you even more. And that's so beautiful what you did. And so now we're talking about identity. If that becomes a part of my identity, and a part of that emotional experience stays with me, and I say to myself, my mom's voice internalizes, it becomes my voice and says, well, I have shared, I contributed, and I was rewarded. Therefore I'm a good person, and that's what I do. And so moving away from my identity or doing something against my identity would cause emotional pain later in life. And if I was always rewarded by doing that, that becomes a part of my identity. So do you think it's a possibility that contribution can also, or that empathy can also become a part of our identity, and which is ego?
Yes.
Yes, I was going to say the same thing.
Like, a lot of people will do a good deed because it makes them feel good. And some people will argue that that's selfish, or that you're doing it to satisfy your own ego. I'm not saying but that one's good deed was actually not because they genuinely cared for the person who had the deed done for them, but rather to perhaps silence their own inner demons or feel good about themselves for having done something for someone else. That would be egotistical as well.
And so, TJ, do you agree with this?
Yes.
Got it. And so my question here is that if that's really truth, then what is outside of the ego?
Well, it reminded me of Elijah, I'll get to you. It reminded me of an interesting little story about there was a search for the most humble man on the planet, and they finally found him, and they pinned a medal on his jacket, proclaiming him to be the most humble man on the planet. 2 weeks later, they took it away from him because he kept it on his jacket. He was wearing the award. And so when you come down to, is the ego taking over? It's in how you wear it. It's how you use it, and it's how you view it. If you identify with the act of helping others, and all of a sudden it turns into, I'm doing this because it's for me to feel good, then I believe the ego has taken over. Which again is why what I put into my questioning affirmation, whose life can I change for the better, even if I don't know about it? I did that for myself as a fail-safe to tell the ego, we don't need the glory, we don't need to know about it. I just want to go out and try to make the world a better place because it's the right thing to do. Now, if I start looking for, hey, how was your day the other day? When I told you that certain thing and I made you feel better, how you feeling today? And my ego starts searching for validation. Now I've gotten the ego involved. Does that make sense? And I see the friends.
That was pretty good. And also at one point you said to me, if I do this because it makes me feel good. And then earlier I was talking about how everything we do is because of the feeling. Either we want to feel better or we want to feel the same. We want to feel different. So, and if that's the truth, then what's outside? And I get the sense of what you're saying. What I'm trying to ask you is, I'm trying to put this in definition, to find the words, to put in words. And I get that sense. What you're talking about when you talk about, but it's really subtle and it's deep inside. And it's like, yes, I would love to help old lady that's crossing the street that dropped bag of groceries to pick it up. Nobody has to see it. I'm going to feel good about it. And yes, there is something beyond just the ego, beyond just the feeling. It's like the sense of the right thing to do. And I can't quite define that. That's why I asked for help.
I think that you can take the argument for what is ego to an extreme level. Anything that gives gratification can be considered egotistical, even relationships, things that you love. So don't take it so seriously. It's okay. We're human. This is what we do. This is who we are. And though I honor your question, what's outside ego? Are we built to have stuff outside unless we become completely transcended and don't care about life, body, food, anything? We're not built that way. So are you going to be an enlightened being, or are you going to be a human? And where is your line?
Well, I think that's essential. When you say don't take it so seriously, it's like, well, it's freezing over here where I'm at now. And I say, oh, don't take it seriously. I can just go walk out in, shorts and, short sleeve shirt. I think life is not so serious. Well, next day I'm sick. And I think that's essential. And that's why I'm asking for clarification. Isn't that why we're here, to find more and to dive deeper? And yeah, there's also people who just stay on the surface level. And I like deep conversation. And that's why I'm here. AAA, 100 and what is it?
Triple T, dig it in. And
Triple T, what is this now? 109, 103.
Yep. Yeah. And Mark, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I think of one of the qualities of
Be right with you, Holly.
a real man. Again, there's someone who is egocentric, but there's a continuum, and I coined a term, don't steal it, it's going to be in my book. It's called exocentric. So you've got egocentric and exocentric. And real men tend towards that end of the continuum. They genuinely want to help people, because that's how they judge themselves as being successful, is they make everyone around them successful or happy. So you've got egocentric at one end and exocentric at the other. And you always try to, again, egocentric is more towards what Lenore was saying about the dark side of ego. But the other end of that continuum, exocentric, would be the opposite, that someone who, rising tide lifts all boats, because a successful person would only judge themselves as being successful if they make everyone around them successful or happy or whatever. But that would be my definition of exocentric. So, you do things because it's right. You do things because, you're helping the people in your tribe, the people around you. That would be, towards, that's what we try to, that's what I try to emulate every day, is try to help other people become, in my tribe, my peeps, try to keep, and that's, I think that's, it's generally good-hearted people tend to be at that end of the continuum. That's it.
Yep. Thank you for sharing. Holly.
All right, so this is not something I've thought through. I'll just leave myself on camera. This is not something I've thought through in a lot of detail, so I might change my mind halfway through. But so if you go with the definition of ego as kind of being that sense of I, if you think about it, there's kind of also a sense of a group consciousness, where everybody, and little kids kind of actually have to learn this concept of I. Ego is the concept that it's that concept of separation, of being an individual, of me being able to say I am me, I and you don't exist in a group consciousness, but they do as individuals. And so what is not ego? I would kind of think, so for instance, if I'm going to help somebody else, if I'm doing it from a place of ego, it might be, hey, mom raised me that she gave me more treats when I was good or whatever, and I'm getting that wonderful feeling. That might be with an ego place. But if I decide to kind of connect back with the group consciousness, then I'm able to touch this place where I say, oh, that other person has feelings. That other person might actually get happiness when I share. That's when I'm doing it not necessarily from a place of ego, but from a place of joining back with the group consciousness. But then, of course, I've got to separate back out again and be an I, and decide how to navigate that. I could be completely off on that. Like I said, it's just kind of a thought that's running around my head, but I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Awesome. Thank you, Holly. And Elijah.
Hello, Salvo. I know your question was not directed at me, and when I kind of half answered in the middle, you once again went back to ask TJ to follow up. Would it be okay if I answer your question? What is inside of us that is not ego? That's the question I heard, right? And I think, and this is just off the top of my head, it's not something I've given a lot of thought to, but it's the instinctive answer that came since you first asked the question, and that is the divine. What is in us that is not our ego is the divine. What is it that makes you want to pick up the groceries of the old lady who dropped them when she was crossing the street? What is it that makes you want to do something good and not really care if anyone finds out about it? It's that spark of, however you define the divine for you, because not everybody is religious, right? And that's something that exists within all of us, and we recognize it. And I think it's also a part of what Holly was talking about this kind of collective unconsciousness. I think it's what binds us together and what makes us all one in some way. And so that would be my answer to it, because it's It's hard to define, but that's kind of what I feel.
And I'd like to chip in, please, with what about people who don't necessarily think the same way? People that are on the spectrum, people with Asperger's syndrome, who don't have the same connection to ego and other people's ego and other people's thoughts and feelings to the same degree that you and I do. If you actually want to get out of ego, start thinking the way they do to some degree, because they have a very different perception of me and non-me and interactions and reward. So just throwing that out there.
I'm glad you brought that up. Another thing that popped into my mind was when things are done, what's the difference between ego and obligation? I did this because I have to. I did this because I was trained to. I did this because I helped a little lady across, because if my mentor ever saw me standing alone watching a little lady cross the street by herself, I'd get my butt smacked. Versus the bravado of, oh, the lady's crossing the street, nobody's seeing, well, what do I care? The lady's crossing the street and there's a car of hot chicks. Oh, this way, ma'am, let me. And there's so many variables that, I love what this topic is coming into. We're looking at so many angles, up, down, sideways, and across, that it's really, I love this. And Elijah brought up in the chat, Sonder, the definition is the profound feeling of realizing that everyone, including strangers passing the street, has a life as complex as one's own, which they are constantly living despite one's personal lack of awareness of it. And I think ego is going to be right inside of that definition as well, is we all have, as human beings living this human experience, interactions with our own egos and other people's egos. And oftentimes our definition of another person's ego is an interpretation of our mirror of our own. Well, he just did that because of his ego. Well, did he do it because of his ego, or would you have done it because of your ego? And I think that's where we're coming up with so many amazing, diverse definitions and angles on this, because the more you interact with humans in their natural environment, the more you experience interactions with ego, non-ego, soft ego, hard ego, all the above. And I think we've all seen the full extremes. The people that do things for you with, you just know, zero ego involved. They just do it because it's the right thing to do. And then we've also experienced people that have done things completely ego-driven. And even if it was the exact same action, how different did it feel when they did that for us? I know I've had, go ahead, Fran.
And who's in a position to judge?
Yes.
It all comes down to judgment. And are we God to be able to make these great judgments of this is ego, this is non-ego, that everybody's doing their best in their own way to do what they feel is right. And
Exactly.
it's
Is it
only
not
in the eye of
one's
the
judgment
observer.
that's making it? Is it not one's ego that's making a judgment?
It's only the observer that can suggest it's ego or non-ego, unless you're God. But we all have God within us, so maybe we are the right people.
And I've had my inner self kick me in the forehead because of some very egotistical thoughts and acts. Like, dude, did you, for real, really, did you just, and I know that was full on my personal judgment of my own out of control ego. And I've got one that the most memorable one for me, unquestionably, was when I watched the footage for 9/11, watching it live. And my first judgment, well, there goes my birthday, because my birthday is 9/12. And 30 seconds later, my other side of my body went, "You egotistical, what did you just say that?" I was like, yeah, we retract that thought. We're going to be okay. But I remember that to this day. And I know it was a complete knee-jerk ego response. What about me? And I think the what about me is also a heavy ego-driven concept.
Thanks for sharing that, man. That I believe that great leaders will put that shit, their ego, especially the shadow parts of ego, right up in front and say, this is what's in me and this is what I battle. And I think that gives us liberation and the feeling that's the closest to being outside of the ego. And for me personally, that's peace. When I know that I have peace, I know when I feel peace, I know that my attachments are not as strong. My fear or any other feelings that would come up, shame, guilt, sadness, it's just not there. It's just peace is absence of other feelings. And yes, feelings, I feel, I think at this moment after this conversation are created by ego. Feelings are created by ego, and there is something else that we can sense, and maybe not through our five senses, as I really like what you described. Like, it's something that it's empathetic, but it's something that you can sense, you can't quite describe, and it's outside of just the desire and the feeling. And to me, I find that in peace.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. We got hands all over the place. Elijah.
I was just going to say very briefly, it's okay to have those kind of egotistical thoughts, right? Oh, what about my birthday or something to that effect? It's okay, dude. I know we judge ourselves for having those thoughts, but that judgment is what's going to contribute to the shadow. And to be okay with that kind of selfish part of yourself and that natural instinct that you have is what's going to release anything from forming any sort of shadow in the first place, and helping release anything that you have in those kind of ways. So don't be too hard on yourself, and not just you. And I'm sure you're over it because you're a professional and you've come a long way. But just as a message for anyone else who's watching, it's okay to have those thoughts. They're just thoughts.
And I appreciate you bringing that up big time.
I'm piggybacking right off of both of you guys. I love that you said that. And what Fran had shared earlier, don't take it so seriously. What if one cannot exist without the other? And the mission is to accept both. I like that, Fran.
Amen. Mike?
Absolutely spot on, Lenora. And we need people who are willing to stand up and take on other people's egos and allow them to butt heads with this, because that's how exciting things happen. This is what we're doing here and now. And whether we admit it or not, we are butting heads with each other's egos as well, right here, right now. And that's great. This is creative. And also delving into the shadow self is where a lot of the richness of our life actually can generate from, by acknowledging the stuff that we repress, by acknowledging our dark sides. We are all capable of being saints or sinners. And, to say otherwise is stupid. And I've been noticing a lot of things about myself that I could do better. And sometimes I don't want to. So forgive me, but
Wait, you're human?
I'm human.
You're human?
Thank you.
And I like that Salvo added, as soon as that child is acknowledged, that child is not driving the bus anymore. Yeah. That's part of the personal work that we do and we help people with as agents of change. And Holly, you got your hand up.
So I'll try to be really fast. Just a quick thought. I don't necessarily think of ego and pride as being perfectly synonymous, but there might be a little bit of overlap in how people use the terms. And so the way I always define pride is basing your self-worth and the value of your achievements in comparison to other human beings. And lack of pride is when you look at it in full perspective, God's perspective, the universe's perspective, whatever. So just to give an example, let's look at your IQ. Let's look at somebody who has an IQ of 179 compared to somebody who's 90. If you're zoomed in, those look like they're very far away. But now look at the IQ of somebody who theoretically knows everything there is to know. What would the IQ, when you zoom out to put that on the graph, those 2 points get so close to each other, you can't even tell the difference anymore. And so whether it's your wealth, whether it's your intelligence, whether, whatever it is you're looking at it from that view of the differences honestly don't mean that much. I'm not better, I'm not worse. That's, I think, when you're looking at non-pride. When you're zoomed in up close thinking those differences matter a ton, that's when it's pride.
Amen. I appreciate you sharing that. That's why when I teach timeline manipulation, one of the ones is where I have them take their entire timeline from conception to end of days, shrink it down to the width of their shoulders, and look at what's bugging you today. Can you see it on that timeline? Can you see that itty bitty tiny little speck? Is it worth the energy you're expelling in that perspective? And if you advance 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, can you see it from that perspective? No. Then you've invested all the energy you need to use it in a better place.
What would life be like if we didn't have egos? If we had no sense of this is me, this is non-me? Can you even stretch your mind to that?
Robots.
I would imagine it would be like being like algae.
Being like what?
Algae.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you say algae or algae where you're from, but for me, they're interchangeable.
Some seaweed.
Can I be mycelia, please?
Oh, dude, I just started reading about mycelium, right? And oh my God, it's so exciting. It's so exciting. What's actually really funny, I was watching, sorry, I'm going to go off topic just for a moment.
Go, please.
I was watching Star Trek Discovery, and there's a character in that. He's like the chief engineer, and he's called Dr. Paul Stamets. And, you know, spoilers if you haven't seen the Star Trek thing, but they have this ship that can teleport, and they use mycelium to teleport from point to point in the galaxy. But the thing is, the world leading expert in real life on mycelium is Dr. Paul Stamets, and they named the character in Star Trek after the real guy who wrote the book Mycelium Running, and it was just amazing. So it was so cool to figure out that they actually named it after the dude in real life, and yeah, very, very fun to find
Right
out.
on.
Yeah, Mycelium Running is the name of the book, if anyone's interested. Very exciting stuff. Who would have known that tiny mushrooms were the future?
They do so much more than anybody has any idea about.
We're just kind of going around living our lives, not really knowing that they even exist for the longest time, and yet they're everywhere.
Oh, Savo's just put in a beautiful quote. Savo, say it out loud. That's wonderful.
Please, yes.
I said that a bad day for your ego can be a big, beautiful day for your soul.
Exactly.
And I should really state that in I statements, because I noticed that every time I change the referential index, even when I teach, their egos come up and they fight against that definition. So I should say a bad day for my ego could be a good day for my soul.
Yes. Awesome. And we've got 3 minis left. Anybody got any other comments, epiphanies, ahas? What a great topic. Which is why I love second hour being open mic, open platform, because kind of like a box of chocolates. You don't know what you're going to get. Lenara.
I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for sharing your insights. It definitely helped answer a lot of questions that I had, and now I have more questions, but it's okay. So thank you for answering the call of what it is and what it involves.
So do you have more questions, or do you have better questions?
Oh, I was like, I always have more questions.
Or do you have more better questions?
more pinpointed questions.
And for those of you guys out on YouTube, I'm going to give you a challenge. I just thought of this. In the comments section, what's your favorite part about what you've heard and experienced in session 103 on Triple T? Inquiring minds want to know. And you can answer it with your ego or without your ego. You can put out an answer with your ego. You can put out your answer without an ego, and we'll compare the two. But my ego, I think, is in check what I get to say every week. Thank you guys for allowing this to be another episode, another session, because without you, I'd just be chatting to myself, and I don't think it would be nearly as interesting. And I always, as you know, want to thank you guys for investing your very precious commodity, being your time, because I cannot give that back to you. And so for you to take that precious commodity and invest it here on this platform for, not for me, my ego, because great things come out, and somebody out there needed to hear this. Whether it's tonight, today, tomorrow, next week, next year, whatever, that is gold, and it happened because you took the time to invest your time here. And I thank you, thank you, thank you. For those of you that believe in Christmas and Santa Claus, Merry Christmas. For the rest of you, I hope you have a great holiday, weekend, whatever you do with your day. And New Year's is coming up. So, hey, let's see what we can prepare ourselves for 2024. I'm excited. It's going to be wild, crazy, and grabbing on, hanging on. And with that in mind, please take care of yourself. Love yourself, love your friends, love your family. Go out and make the world a much better place. You make mine a better place, and I thank you for that. Love you all. I'll see you back here in 7.